Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Rebecca Garcia. I'm the Chief Prevention and Communications Officer for CPRIT. This afternoon I'm joined by Ramona Magid. She's the Senior Program Manager, and Kelly Reese, who's the Scientific Review Manager with SRA International. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I need to advance. I'm going to present the first part of the program and talk about the funding opportunities that we have available. And then Kelly's going to talk about the application receipt system. And some of you may be familiar with it, and if you've used it before and you don't need to stay on for that part, that's fine. Each segment of the presentation will have a question and answer portion, and we will hold the questions until the end of each portion, and we'll give you instructions on how to ask questions online or by phone. So I think most of you are familiar with CPRIT, but there may be a few on the phone that are not. Our mission at CPRIT is to reduce the burden of cancer, and we do this by awarding grants and investing broadly through 3 programs: academic research program, product development research, and prevention. So today we're going to be focusing on funding opportunities offered through the prevention program. So we're not going to discuss research or product development during this presentation. So each program has program priorities that are established every year by the Oversight Committee. And for prevention, those priorities are that we are going to support only evidence-based interventions. We will support projects across the continuum of prevention, so we'll support primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention activities. We do prioritize populations and geographic areas where there's a great need and a great potential for impact. We focus on underserved areas, underserved populations, so this will be your underinsured and uninsured. And we look at areas where there are significant disparities. In addition to the priorities, we do have areas of emphasis. Thank you. We do have areas of emphasis. Any application that we receive that is responsive to the RFA will be considered. However, we do highlight areas that we're particularly interested in. And to do this, we look at data that comes from the Cancer Registry, and we will highlight geographic areas that of the state that have higher incidence and mortality rates. Then we also, for primary cancer prevention, what we are interested in are areas where we know we can see sustainable behavior change, and also areas that are not well represented in our portfolio. For example, tobacco cessation or liver cancer prevention are 2 areas in our current portfolio that are not very well represented. When we look at screening and early detection, we do look at the population and geographic disparities. And for survivorship, we look for projects that can demonstrate measurable improvement. So all of these areas of emphasis are really highlighted in your RFAs. But remember, we're not limited to just these areas of emphasis. There are areas that we see a particular need in, but any application that is responsive to the RFA will be considered. So we have 2 funding cycles a year. This is our second cycle. These applications are due January 7th. They will be considered by our Oversight Committee in May, and the contract start date for successful applications will be June 1st. There are 6 RFAs in this cycle. One of them is new, and that is our CPRIT program. And the other is relatively new, dissemination of CPRIT-funded cancer control interventions. It'll be the second time we've released that RFA. So we're going to spend a little more time on the new RFAs and leave plenty of time for question and answers in this session. So we really hope that by now you've had some time to read through the RFAs and maybe even start an application, and you'll be ready with some questions in a minute. I'm going to ask Ramona to describe the next RFA for us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So our new RFA is an Evidence-Based Cancer Prevention Services C-Test-Treat program, and it is our new one. It is a collaboration between the College of American Pathologists Foundation and CPRIT. And it's a 1-day cervical and breast cancer screening program. This program is led by a pathologist in partnership with medical facilities and other healthcare practitioners to deliver breast and cervical cancer screening, culturally appropriate education on risk reduction and early detection, and navigation services to follow-up testing and other programs as needed. The goal is to do the same-day results. However, there may be an instance where they might not be able to deliver same-day results, in which case they would be very prompt results, less than a week. But generally, the results would be given to the women within the same day, and while women are waiting for their testing or the results, there will be plenty of other activities, educational activities, maybe some cooking demonstrations, the ability to interact with the pathologist as women and their families wait. So it's a family-friendly, patient-driven event, and the amount of funding that's available is up to $25,000 and for up to 12 months. Because this is a collaboration between the 2 organizations, the processes for both organizations must be followed, and this is well laid out in the RFA. And just to point out that because CPRIT cannot reimburse some of the expenses such as food, the CAP Foundation, the College of American Pathologists, may be able to provide funding for those expenses. So please read the RFA and consider, all the requirements if you choose to apply for this RFA. The next RFA is one we've released once. This is our second time to release it. And CPRIT has funded some very successful projects in our first 5 years, and we really would like to stimulate the packaging and the dissemination of these very successful projects. The projects that we want to package and disseminate are for previously or currently funded CPRIT projects. So the goal would be applicants would apply for the dissemination grant, and they should be prepared to develop their products, say materials or policies or any other resources. They should be able to identify and assist others to prepare to implement or prepare to apply for grant funding to implement the program. The dissemination strategies, we are both passive and active. We require 2 or more active dissemination strategies. And I'll give you some examples of passive dissemination. Might be a mass mailing or a publication or an ad, say. Active dissemination would be the actual tools and models, the implementation guides, the policy briefs. The RFA lists several examples of active versus passive dissemination strategies. You must include 2 or more of those, as I said. Also, you must provide technical assistance and/or training to the organizations that choose to implement your intervention that you're wanting to disseminate. So an example of this RFA would be the dissemination of training materials used to train community health workers from a previously funded, very successful CPRIT project. Just a little more detail on the evaluation criteria are a little bit different from the others in our portfolio, so please read those very carefully and don't assume that the reviewers are familiar with the original project that you plan to disseminate. The funding is up to $300,000 for up to 2 years.
Well, those were brief descriptions of the 2 new requests for applications. We're not going to go into detail about the others, but we're happy to answer questions in a little bit about any of the 6 that are open for application. Wanted to go over then just a little bit the peer review evaluation criteria. These are the general criteria that the review panels consider when evaluating proposals. So be sure you read through these very carefully in each RFA. Sometimes they're a little bit different in general. They are repeated in each RFA, but they may just be a little different in from one version to the next. The one that is relatively new, the new evaluation criteria, is integration and capacity building. And this is where the reviewers are looking at how you've described components of the project that are going to be integrated into the organization after the CPRIT project, after CPRIT funding ends. How will they be integrated through things like policies and procedures, systems change, things like that. They also will look at capacity building. So describe components of the project that will remain in place after CPRIT funding ends. For example, describe trained personnel, other resources, and whether or not you will be able to continue the delivery of some or all of the intervention. We know that without funding, sometimes it's not possible to continue offering all of the same services, but many times there are parts of those services that your organization can incorporate, can sustain, and can build into your current systems. So just a little bit about some of the issues that our reviewers frequently cite when they're discussing these applications, and things that you should pay attention to in your proposal. Ramona and I, as CPRIT staff, do not have a role in the review process, but we are definitely there to provide them information and answer their questions. And these are some of the things that we hear them discuss quite often. First of all, since we're only funding evidence-based interventions, be sure that you explain in your application and reference the evidence base of the project you're proposing. Then we also hear a lot about evaluation plans, so make sure that you have meaningful, measurable objectives. If you don't have evaluation expertise on staff, really think about contracting with an evaluation professional, and do so at the beginning of the process so that they can help you really outline the measurable objectives and work that throughout your application. For those of you who are resubmitting applications or submitting to continuation and expansion, be sure that you restate your project fully. Don't assume that your reviewers know about your project or remember, because sometimes we'll have the same reviewers, but do a good job of restating your project and not making some assumptions. For those that are resubmissions and not continuation or expansions, the reviewers are going to provide you with a lot of comments, and they do a very good job of that. But you don't have to really address every single point that they make, but really focus on the major weaknesses that they've outlined. And when you resubmit, the reviewers are going to be looking to see just how you addressed those weaknesses that they cited before. Then again, talking about integration and capacity building, do describe what is going to remain once CPRIT funding ends. They're really concerned about sustainability and what is the return on investment from CPRIT funding, what is left behind when CPRIT funding ends. So again, this might be things like personnel, systems changes, networks, relationships with other clinics or community organizations. So it's very important to think about that carefully and describe that. And then another area that they're very strict about is access to treatment. So if you are providing a service that has the potential to detect cancer, you have to describe how you're going to ensure that those people will get the treatment resources that they need. So those evaluation criteria are used in the first stage of the review process. Then there's a second stage in the review process, and that's our programmatic review that is conducted by our Prevention Review Council. And these are the things they look at. So once all the applications have been scored, they look at the highest scoring applications and then review them with these things in mind. They look at potential for public health impact and return on investment. They look at geographic distribution. So they look at our portfolio and see areas of the state where maybe we don't have a lot of services or projects, and that will be one consideration. They look at cancer type, and they look at type of program, because we want a fairly well-balanced portfolio and don't want a portfolio that is basically one cancer type in one area of the state. So at the second stage of review, these are the 4 areas that our Prevention Review Council will take a look at.
Becky just mentioned our portfolio. So this map shows the counties that our current projects are covering. Right now we have 50 projects, and where you see the white is counties where we don't have any specific county-specific project. We do have some statewide projects. Those are maybe online education or something like that. But as you can see, we have several areas of the state where we do not have coverage, and several counties where we just have one project. That's the light gold color that you see. For more information about these maps and more detailed maps, you can go to our website. And in addition to this overall portfolio map, you will find detailed maps broken out by cancer type and type of service, whether it be clinical services or education or survivorship. So in order to find these maps, you go to the CPRIT website and then click on the Prevention tab, and then on the left-hand nav bar is something called the Portfolio Maps, and that's the tab you would click on. And we will add some new grants to our portfolio at the upcoming Oversight Committee meeting in November, and I'll update these maps soon after that. So be sure to visit the website.
These next two slides are just information about how to access the sites to apply for a CPRIT grant. Again, our deadline for these applications is January 7th. If you need some help working through the system, here's the contact information. All of this is in the RFA as well, and we are available here to help you and answer questions. With that, that sort of ends Ramona and my part of this presentation. Oops, there's the prevention team contact information. I forgot I had one more slide. But we're ready to open it up for questions, and you can do that a couple of ways. Ramona's going to tell you how you can submit your questions.
And I wanted to add that we will post the audio and the slides of this webinar shortly after the webinar. So this information will be available. So there are two ways to submit your questions. The first way is to submit your question via chat. You can do this by typing your question into the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen and then clicking the send button. The second way to ask a question is by using your phone. To do this, you must first raise your hand by clicking the hand button on the left-hand side toolbar of the webinar menu. Once you've clicked the hand button, you'll be placed into a queue along with other callers who are waiting to speak. When your name is called, we will unmute the line so that you may ask your question, and be sure that your phone is not on mute so that we can all hear you ask your question. When you finish asking your question, then please lower your hand by pressing the hand button again. And also remember that these teleconferences are often sensitive to background noise. So if you raise your hand to ask a question and you're added to the queue, ensure that you're in a location with minimal background noise so the presenter and the audience can clearly hear your question. So we're ready to take your questions. Danny Choi has his hand raised, but his audio is not connected. So Danny, if you want to type in your question via the chat box, we'll be able to answer it.
So we're waiting for questions to either be typed in, or anyone else at this point, if you want to ask a question by phone, please do. Maybe we covered it so well there are no questions. So we'll turn it over to Kelly, but we're going to stay on. So if you think of questions while Kelly's talking about the system and how to navigate the actual application system, please go ahead and submit those at any time, and we'll answer questions at the end. So, Kelly?
Okay. Are you going to change it over to me to view my screen?
Your slide showing?
Okay, is it showing?
There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. What I want to do is talk about two things. first, I want to give you an overview of CARS, which is the CPRIT application receipt system, and give you an overview of the tabs and the application components. And then I'm going to give a live demo and show you how to go about submitting an application. So first, as you can see on here, I have some general tips about starting and completing an application. Basically, when you start, a few key people are required. You need a program director, who will be the one to start the application, an authorized or application signing official, who will be the one to actually submit the application, and then a grants contract official. And in addition, there are some optional individuals that you may have, like a co-program director, an alternate submitter, an alternate ASO, or a program coordinator. Now, since there are quite a diversity of organizations that apply for these prevention grants, for some smaller community organizations, these required individuals may be one and the same person, and that's okay. The larger organizations may have all of the optional individuals. The important thing for everyone to remember is that the program director starts the application and the ASO finishes and submits it to complete the process. Okay, so to start the application, you will go to New Applications, and you'll either have a brand new application, so you'll just click on Start New Application, and if this is a CCE, tell people, you'll enter the initial funded project ID. And if this is a resubmission, then there's going to be a Start Resubmission link by that designated application. So you can just choose the application on that link and click Start Resubmission. Okay. So after starting your application, you're going to see 7 tabs and CARS, and I'm just going to tell you the highlights of each tab. First, you'll see the Summary tab, and that's where you're going to see the status of each application section. So basically, at a glance, you'll be able to see what you've completed. This tab is also important because you can access requests for applications, the instructions for applicants, the IFA, as well as the application templates. An example of some templates that you'll see will be the template for biographical sketches or templates to show your current and pending support. Tab 1 is the Contacts tab, and that's where you're going to enter the information for your ASO, the grants contract official. You can also send people an invitation to get them registered in the system. The second tab is the Application Information, and that's used to categorize your application. So you're going to be asked several questions here, for example, about the population served, about the geographic area that's being targeted, the cancer sites, ethnicity. The important thing to remember in this tab is that for some questions, you'll see check boxes or dual select boxes. And in those cases, you can select multiple answers. And then in cases where you see a radio button, the system will only allow you to make one choice. Tab 3 is the Collaborating Organizations tab. And this is where you can describe the role of your collaborators, and you can enter as many as necessary. Just click Save as Draft to continue your list and to add more collaborators. Tab 4 is the Required Documents tab, and this is really the meat of your application. So this is where you're going to have your abstract, your goals and objectives, project plan, letters of commitment. You'll see text fields for the abstract and the goals and objectives. And then the rest of the tab are going to be documents that you submit as PDF uploads. Now the key here is that if the document is not applicable, you're still going to need to upload something. So you're just going to want to upload either the template or a blank page that states NA. Basically the system is smart enough to know that it needs a document in that slot, but of course it's not going to know whether it's applicable to you or not. So something is going to be needed. So for example, if the program director doesn't have previous CPRIT funding, and the CPRIT grant summary is then not applicable, then just take that template form, put NA in it, and upload it. And I also want to note here that the bio sketch of the program director and co-program director have already been entered in the profile, so those bio sketches don't need to be duplicated in this tab. Tab 5 is the Budget tab, and there are 4 main components of that. One is where you're going to put the salary and fringe benefits for the personnel. Then you'll be asked to give an itemized detailed budget for the first year. Then you'll be asked to give a budget summary for the entire period of performance, and then finally the budget justification tab. And at this point, the applicant will be finished, but tab 6 is very important, and that's the final review and submit tab. But this is the one that must be completed by the ASO in order for the application to come through the system. So of course, if you have any programmatic questions, please contact the Prevention Program Office. The number is up here. And if you have any technical questions related to CARS, our help desk is always really happy to answer any of your questions. In fact, I have a colleague right here, Morgan Masherzak, who you will probably speak to on the phone. And like I said, they're always happy to answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to go into the live demo to show you how to go about submitting one of these applications. Let's just see, my computer is being a little slow. Okay, here we go. Okay, so to start the application process, you're going to want to go first to this website, cpritgrants.org, and you're going to see a lot of announcements here. And what you want to do if you don't have an account is register. And you can do that either by clicking on this link, register here, or clicking on this tab up here. So I'm going to go ahead and register. Apologize for the computer being a little bit slow. Okay, so this page will come up and you're going to put in some information about yourself. So I'll go ahead and call myself CPRIT Webinar. Then it's going to ask you for a username. So pick a username. It'll ask you for a password. Go ahead and choose a password, and the system will let you know if it thinks you picked a good secure password. And then it will ask you to answer a few security questions. So just go ahead and answer the security questions, click I am an applicant, and then down here you're going to enter your contact information. So the first thing to do is select your organization from this drop-down menu. If your organization does not appear in this list, please contact the help desk by clicking on this link. And then go ahead and they'll get you set up in the system once you do that. And then go ahead and put in the rest of the information that's asked. Of course, anything noted with a red asterisk is required. So go ahead and put in my address and zip, county, phone, fax number, email. Further down, let's see, I think this may have already been taken. Let me add that. Okay. Further down, you'll put in your demographic information, and then you'll hit Create User Account. Now let's see, all answers must be unique. Okay, so you'll see if there's any errors that will come up. Okay, so once you've created your account, this page will come up. And what I like to do up front, although you can do this at any point of the application process, is to upload my BioSketch. So to do that, you're going to go to My Profile and click on the BioSketch tab, and then go to Prevention Programs, and then you'll see that the BioSketch template is here as a Word document. So just download that, fill it out, save as a PDF, and then you can go ahead and upload that. The computer is really slow today. Okay, you hit that and you hit upload. Now what I do want to note is that if you already have a BioSketch in here and you want to replace it with a more current one, go ahead and upload that, but the key then after you upload the new one is to hit this button, Verify as Current. And that will ensure that the most recent version of the biosketch is here and then is later pulled into the application. Okay, so as soon as you're done with that, go to My Applications, and that's how you get started in submitting an application. Once you get to this page, I do want to note that if you have any previously submitted applications, they will be listed here under Application ID. And so if you want to resubmit an application, there'll be a link here that says Start Resubmission, and you'll click on that. But I'm going to go ahead and start a new application, which you can do either by clicking this link or clicking the tab. It takes you to the same place. And I'll go ahead and start an EBP application. You'll put in the title. I'll note myself as Program Director, and then hit Create New Application. So now you're going to see all the tabs that I was previously speaking about. Here we're at the Summary tab, and this is where you can see the status on the other tabs. So of course nothing's been completed and everything now is in draft mode. You can also go down on this page and access the Request for Application, the Instructions for Applicants, as well as the application templates, which will be used at different parts of the application. So for example, we have the biographical sketches here, current and pending support, where you're going to list your current and pending funding. The CPRIT grant summary is where the program director will describe the progress or results of all CPRIT funded grants. The resubmission summary is for those who are resubmitting. And then the goals of initial funded project, that would just be for CCE applications. So this is where you can access all of those. So to get started, let's go to the first tab, and that's going to be the Contacts tab, which can be accessed by this link or by clicking on the tab up here. So you'll see that the information that you put in when you registered is pre-populated. Now, I do want to note that if you, at any point, if your address has changed since you started an application, if that change was made in My Profile, all you have to do is click this button, Apply, and it will pull that information in right here so that it's current. You can also just directly make the change here and then save. The only problem with that is that it won't save in the My Profile. So it's really best to change it under My Profile as you went through before and then hit Apply to pull it into this part of the application. So here's where you can go through and add other people to the application. So let's start with the co-program director. Now this person is optional, but let's just say that we have a co-program director. You're going to click on Search, put in the last name, click Search Contacts, and then hopefully that person will come up. If that person is not in the system, just click on this link, send them an invitation, and that will send them an email to register in the system. If the person is there, you just hit Add Contact, and you'll see that their information will be populated. The required people would be the ASO. So once again, just click on that link, put in the name, hit Search Contacts, and once you see them, hit Add Contact, and that information will populate. And then the grants contract official is also required. So hit Search, put in the name, Search Contacts, and then you can pull them in that way. So once you finish adding all the necessary contacts, you're just going to hit Finalize Contact section, and then you're going to get an email notification that this tab has been finalized and that it's no longer editable. So if you want to make any changes at this point, the ASO is going to have to go into the system and reset this tab for you. Okay, the next tab is Application Information. So you can see it's already pre-populated with the title of your application and the application type. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is put in the proposed end date for the project. Now a little hint with that is that you'll see the system has the contract start date is June 1, 2016. Now if, for example, this is a 3-year project, you don't want to put that it ends on June 1, 2019 because that extra day is going to confuse the system and you're going to get an error. So you're going to want to put May 31st, 2019. And then you'll move down the page, you'll select the cancer sites that are addressed, and you can select as many cancer sites as applicable by hitting the Control key, and then just hit the right arrow to move those over. If you want to remove anything, highlight it and hit the left arrow. You'll select one primary focus. You'll select as many topics as apply. Now this question asks for the total number of professionals reached. So let's say that 1,000 professionals have been reached. Then you're going to want to elaborate on this box on the type of people that are being reached by this service. So for example, I'll put something like these people are members of the community who attended the local health fair. And then it'll ask the total number of people served. Let's say 100 people were served. And then you're going to want to itemize in this box the type of services that these professionals are getting. So for instance, I might put each individual will receive 1 education, 1 navigation, and 2 clinical services. So that's say 100 education services. You can elaborate what type of service, for instance, it's training, 100 navigation services, and let's say 100 clinical services. That includes breast cancer screening, and 100 clinical services, and let's say that includes cervical cancer screening. So you're just going to want to itemize in this text box accordingly. After doing that, you will note the target population, so the geographic area to be served, and this is a dual select box. Once again, just hold the control key, select what's necessary, hit the right arrow, that will slide everything over. You'll note the gender of the target population, the age, as many as applicable, the ethnicity, as many as applicable. Then you'll answer the question of whether the applicant is a BCCS contractor, yes or no. You'll put in information on your Senate and House district, and if you don't know that information, just click on this link, and you can look that up. The next few questions are yes or no questions where you may have to provide more information depending on the answer that you give. So, for example, this question is the applicant currently eligible to receive federal grant funds? And this is really asking if there's any kind of misconduct that occurs that makes the applicant ineligible. So if you answer yes, then no information is needed. If you answer no, you will need to provide an explanation. Has the applicant had an award terminated for cause in the last 5 years? If the answer is no, you can keep it moving. If the answer is yes, you will have to give more information, such as the award, the granting organization, the reason for cancellation, each of the questions listed here. And then has the applicant made a donation to CPRIT or any of these other entities, organizations that have been established to benefit CPRIT? If the answer is yes, then more information about that donation will be needed. If the answer is no, you can just keep going. The last question on this tab is about the CPRIT priorities, so you'll want to read through this list and note which of the CPRIT priorities are addressed in this application. And you can note as many as applicable. Now, if you want to go back at any point and make changes, or you think that you might want to do that, then you're going to want to click Save as Draft. But if everything looks good and you're happy with it, then you'll just finalize. Okay, so an error came up. Oh, I see. Okay, let's see what I did there. Cancer sites addressed. All cancers cannot be selected. I didn't realize I selected all cancers. So let's see. Oh, here we go. Well, that's a learning experience. So click that, remove, or click your applicable ones, and then move forward. So you'll always get an error notice if something is off. There we go. Okay, now we're ready for the third tab, Collaborating Organizations. Now here's where, first of all, you'll see right here that the biosketch for the program director and co-program director are already populated, and that pulled in from the profile. So if you don't see the biosketches here, the place to upload that would be in My Profile. But here's where you can go through and add other collaborating organizations. So you'll just pick the organization from the checklist. You'll select a role, let's say Provisions Clinical Services. You'll answer the question of whether the collaborating organization is a BCCS contractor, and then put in the name of the primary contact person, a description of the role. So, for example, Mr. Joe oversees the provision of breast cancer imaging services. And then the key is to save as draft. Once you do that, if you go to the bottom, you'll see that your list gets started here. So for example, let's put in one other person, select the collaborating organization, select a role, answer whether it's that BCCS contractor, and we'll put in Jane Doe and say that Ms. Joe is the CEO of a hospital, which you would name, that refers patients for cancer screening. Okay, once you do that, hit Save as Draft, and once again, you'll see she's added to this list. So just add as many collaborating organizations as are necessary, and then once you're finished, you're going to hit Finalize, and you're able to move on to the next tab. Once again, you can click here or click up here. So this is the Required Documents tab, and as I said before, this is the real meat of the application. So I want to note up front that you can see that there are 12 steps, and these can be completed in any order that you like. The key is, after you complete one of these steps, you need to save, because if you move to the next step and you haven't completed it, you're going to lose all of your work. That's what's key here. So the two text boxes in this tab would be the abstract and significance. This is going to be a text box, so you're going to enter that in here, and then you're going to save. And then the goals and objectives, that's the other text box. So you're going to enter your goal, your objective, the baseline, the measure, and then you can add an objective by clicking this link here, and you can add up to 5 objectives, or you can add a goal by clicking this link here, and you can add up to 5 goals. When you finish this section, you're going to go ahead and save. Now, the rest of the documents for this tab are all going to be PDF uploads, and this is where those templates that can be found under Summary, this is where they're going to be uploaded. So, for example, there's the project timeline that's going to need to be uploaded as a PDF. So you're going to select it, hit Upload, and you'll know that it's uploaded by the blue hyperlink. Project plan, you'll go ahead, you'll select it, you'll upload it. Now, if you upload a document that goes past the designated page limit, it will upload, but you're going to immediately get an error message. That's something to note. Project references, again, you're just going to search for it on your desktop and upload it. Now, as I stated before, not all of these may be applicable to you. So, for instance, with the CPRIT grant summary, there is a document that is required here, but for instance, if you don't have a previous grant, what you would do is download the template, you would fill out NA, save as a PDF, and upload that, so at least something is uploaded in this slot. Current and pending support, you'll go ahead, find that, upload it, letters of commitment, select for it, upload it. Now, the evaluation professional biosketch, that is optional for the DI mechanism, and you won't see it at all as an option for the STT mechanism, but for all of the others, it is required. And this will be clear to you. All of the required documents have this asterisk. But biographical sketches, for example, as it states, this is optional. It's only required for the CRC mechanism, so we won't go ahead and upload that here. Now, with the budget and justification, what I want to note is that you can go ahead and upload that here as part of the required documents. But if you want to finish the budget before you do that, you can just click on the budget tab, and then you can see it's the 4th sub-tab of the budget. So you can go ahead and fill out the other tabs of the budget, and when you're finished, click on the budget justification tab. Then you'll click on this required documents link, and it will take you right back to the required documents tab, where you can then, at that point, go ahead and upload your biosketch. So I'll go ahead and do that there. So once you have filled out all the necessary information on this tab, you will hit Finalize. The budget is the last tab to fill out. And basically, so you can see there are 4 sub-tabs. And the first tab is going to be information for the senior and key personnel. So you can see that I come up, CPRIT webinar, the program director. You'll put in the length of appointment. So let's say I have a 12-month appointment with a base salary of $70,000 with a 25% effort on the project. Then you'll hit calculate, and then you'll see that the salary total will come up. And let's say I have $2,000 in fringe benefits. Once you enter that, the salary will be adjusted accordingly. Let's put someone else. So let's say John Doe is the program coordinator. And let's say he also has a 12-month appointment, and his base salary is $50,000, and he has 100% effort on the project. Hit calculate, his salary comes up. Let's give him fringe benefits, and that will be adjusted accordingly. Let's put in one more person. Let's say Jane Doe is a collaborator, and let's say she's a 9-month appointment, also $50,000 with 10% effort on the project. And then you're going to hit calculate, and you can see the adjustment will be made. Okay, so when you're finished with this tab, so just go ahead, you're going to add as many key people as applicable for the project. When you're finished with this sub-tab, just click Save Budget as Draft, and then you can move on to the second tab. And at this point, these errors will come up, but you can go ahead and ignore them. It's only because the other tabs have not been filled out. So this other tab is going to be the detailed budget for year 1. And not everything is going to be applicable here, and that's okay. For example, maybe you have travel here in year 1. So let's put $2,000 for travel, but let's say you don't have equipment costs. But let's say you have supply expenses for $2,000. Now, if you put that in, you're going to want to itemize by category, as it says. So, for instance, maybe $1,000 will be stamps for the monthly newsletter, and maybe $1,000 will be office supplies. And you can put in parentheses, you can, specify that. And let's say you have no consultant charges or contractual or service charges, but you do have other. So let's put in $100,000 for other, and then once again go in here and itemize. So that's going to be, let's say, $95,000 for cancer genetic testing, and then let's say $5,000 for outreach events. So just itemize as necessary. When you're finished with this tab, you're going to hit Save Budget as Draft. Okay. Then we'll go to the budget for the entire proposed period of performance. In this case, it's 3 years. So here, you're just going to enter once again what's applicable for the rest of the period of performance. So let's say the salary for the next 2 years is $75,000. But let's say fringe benefits, you have the first year, but not the second year, but you'll have fringe benefits the third year. Let's say you have travel the first and second year, but not the third year. And supplies, all 3 years, and so forth and so forth. You'll just go to the list and fill out the additional years of support as needed. And when you're finished with this tab, once again, you'll hit Save Budget as Draft, and you'll see those error messages will go away. And then the final component is the budget justification, which you may have already filled out under required documents, as I did. And then you'll see the hyperlink here so that you can verify that. Or if you haven't filled that out, that's where you're going to click on this link. It will take you back to required documents, and you can upload it there. So when you are finished with this section, if you're happy with it, then just click Finalize Budget. So at this point, these are all the tabs that the applicant can fill out, because as you can see, this last tab, Final Review and Submit, is grayed out, and that's because only the ASO is the person that can submit. So what you can do at this point is go to the Summary tab, and you can do this at each point after you fill out a tab, and this will just show you the status. You see that each of these tabs have been completed, and now they're pending ASO approval. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log out and then log in as an ASO so that you can see what the ASO sees. Let's see. Okay, so when the ASO logs in, and the ASO will get an email letting them know that the application is pending approval. So they'll log in, they'll go to My Applications, and then they're going to see the application ID and the status is pending approval. They can either click on the application ID or click on View and Edit, although they're not going to be able to make any edits. All they can do is view. So they can go to each of the tabs that you filled out, and you see that the information is there, but it's not editable. And so the ASO is just going to go through each of the tabs, verify the information, make sure everything looks fine. In this final tab, Final Review and Submit, they have the option of either checking these boxes if there are any issues, or if they want the applicant to go back and make any edits. Once they check this box, then they'll click Reset to Draft, and the applicant will get an email noting the section that needs to be edited. And then the applicant will then make the edits, finalize, and then the ASO will get an email that once again is pending approval. If everything looks good, the ASO is just going to put in the password, hit Approve and Submit Application, hit Continue, and this completes the process, and the applicant will get an email letting them know that the application has been submitted. And so that is the entire process. With that, I am happy to take any questions that you may have.
Kelly, there's a question from Tiffany Johnson. Why does the alternate submitter get included in the application? Why is that person listed under collaborators, COIs requiring a biosketch?
My understanding, so a biosketch is not going to be required for an alternate submitter. A biosketch is only going to be required for the ASO and the grants contract official. So they're just one of the people who can be added to the application in that contact section, but a biosketch is not going to be required for them. Does that answer that question?
Tiffany?
Right. They just need to be added if you want someone to help you fill out the application, then they can be added to the application as someone who has sort of rights to go in and fill out the application.
There's another question from Mary Rydell. Is there an easy way to print a final copy of the entire proposal from the CAR system?
Unfortunately, at this time, there isn't. The best way at this point is to just print the screenshots of each tab once you've completed them. That is something we're working on, but at this point, there isn't an easy way to do that.
Tiffany, if you would go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So just going back to the alternate submitter, when you add the alternate submitter to the contact screen, they become part of the application. And I've done this with several different applications, and it just makes for a confusing thing that they become one of the key people when you go to tab 3 and a biosketch is required. So the only way to not have them is to then, after the alternate submitter puts the information in, they have to delete themselves from the application and then continue on like that. So that's been my experience the past few times we've done CPRIT. I'm just wondering why that's the case. And we have not done a prevention one. The ones we've done before, HIHR, I don't know if that's different, but that's been our experience.
Okay, I'll have to look into that, Tiffany, because at least with prevention, the alternate submitter, we haven't had the biosketch required, but of course I want to follow up and make sure I'm giving you the correct information. We really have them added just to be able to help and not to be included in the application.
And that's what we want to do here, is just to have that person help, but it then end up showing up under the key people with the required biosketch.
Right, and that shouldn't happen And so I'm going to make a note of that
Okay.
and make sure that we look into that and test that, because exactly what you want is how it should be set up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have raised your hand to ask a question, you need to have connected to the audio of the conference. See someone who has got their hand raised, but our screen is indicating that you're not connected to the audio. So you'll need to dial in. The other alternative is to type your question into the chat box. I don't see that there are any more questions, so we will sign off. If you have questions that you think of after this webinar, you can use the contact information that's in the slides and send an email to prevention@cprit.state.tx.us. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and we look forward to receiving your applications in January.